You're listening to Tapestry, a podcast by a music lover for music lovers. I'm your host, Kelly. Music is a thread that weaves a course throughout our lives. Join me on a journey to unravel that thread and bring you the stories behind what inspires musicians to create. Side note, Tapestry is an uncensored podcast. Don't say I didn't warn you. What's up, everyone? Thank you for joining me on episode 53 of Tapestry, where I sat down with my fellow Pittsburghers, the men of the band SHOALS, that is Josh, Dan, Zach, and Nick. They're a new band to the Pittsburgh scene, and so I wanted to learn a little bit about more how they got their start. We also talked about a lot of other things, including post-rock tropes, the theme of a journey of one leaving the many, on their debut album Threnody, how being long-term friends colors the full band experience, and takeaways from their first effort about everything from branding, time management, and lessons learned in building the hype. Here's a little sample of their song Enduring Firmament off their debut album Threnody. Tonight, I am joined by the men of the band SHOALS. They're also a Pittsburgh-based band, and because we have 4 people here, I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves, just if you don't mind saying your name and the instrument you play in the band.
Okay, I'm Josh Allshouse. I play guitar.
I'm Zach Hauser. I play guitar too.
I'm Dan Grinick. I play bass.
And I'm Nick Hauser. I do vocals, synth, and programming of the drums.
Perfect. Okay, and I am hearing you guys mostly loud and clear at this point. So, so Nick, I know you were the person who kind of found me. I interview people from all over the place, but it is kind of cool that you guys are all right in my backyard. I don't know how many feet we are away from each other right now, but it's probably within the radius of a couple miles, which is kind of cool. And I guess you guys would sort of describe your sound as like post-metal, sludge, alternative. So I know when you came to me, Nick, I believe you guys had a totally different band name back in the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting little journey, us figuring out our band name. We started off with a working title called Cracked Chalice, which we always knew was going to be a working title or a working name for the band. And then we settled on Insurat, which was actually a homage to Zach and I's grandfather, because we're brothers.
Okay.
Because he was a writer, and he came up with the name Insurat, and we always thought it was a pretty cool name. So we had that name for a while, and during that phase of the band, we were very post-rocky, I guess. Like, It was very progressive, really, really long songs.
Like,
it's a must.
I think we had one that was like 20 minutes close.
It was close. Yeah, it was pretty
really long.
Can you even call yourself prog if you don't have at least one 20-minute long song, really?
Right. Yeah. So we had a bit of a reshaping of the sound and kind of what we wanted to do with the band, and that ended up becoming SHOALS.
How did you guys decide on the name SHOALS?
You know what? I don't know that it kind of just happened. Like, I think I was probably working on some like cover art designs or something, for the album, because I'm just as much of a visual kind of person as music is concerned. Mm-hmm. And when I was doing something like that, I think I just threw the word SHOALS on it, and I brought it to the guys. And
yeah, I really liked it. I was a huge fan of it when I heard it.
I remember whenever he texted me, this was, I think, before I joined the band, right?
Oh, yeah.
I told him I liked it just because of the imagery, I guess, it gives you. It's kind of like a non-specific thing. Like it's about fish, but the band isn't about fish,
Why is it not? Why is it not about fish?
But yeah, I mean, but that's actually, it does have an interesting sort of connection to at least what the first album ended up kind of being about is, a shoal of fish is this big grouping of fish that moves in unison with each other. And that kind of had almost a bit of a connection, I guess, to what the first album was about. So
Right.
And it may have even been a strong influence in sort of like what I wrote with lyrics and everything.
So you were talking about Shoals, how it kind of maybe subconsciously affected the album subject material, and I do find that interesting because now your debut album is called Threnody, and I know I have a lot of questions about kind of that subject matter, and you guys had wanted to talk about that, just how that concept came to be. I'm thinking about it now that I've listened to it a few times. I was like, I wonder if I can go back and like listen for some nautical or aquatic subtext, and you guys will have to explain that to me as we further discuss. But before I get too deep into the current band and you guys as a unit, I kind of want to hear a little bit more about your individual musical journeys, just you as four guys. Like, I know you've all been friends for a while, right? So how long has this thing really been going on, Shoals or not?
Well, I've known him since like 5th or 6th grade, I think. Elementary school.
It was elementary school.
Yeah,
for sure,
elementary school. And I knew Zach through him because we were friends. We used to all hang out and play video games and stuff.
Fair.
I met Nick moving back from Pittsburgh. This is like, 10 years ago? We all worked in the same restaurant, I think.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we met. And then through him, I met, Zach.
I can't believe it's been that long.
Well, having worked in the restaurant industry, I know the people that you actually get along with in the back of the kitchen are the ones you like to actually keep around, because it's like the people who become your best bros, and then the people you wish you could just fucking stab with a knife when you get off your ship. So there's no middle ground.
I understand that.
I was just gonna say it's also crazy that I think that our band sound and certainly the influences for the band were strongly influenced by Dan and my friendship with him, how that started, because he actually introduced me to post metal, and I showed him some, because I played synths, I showed him some synth work that I was doing, and he was listening to it, and he's like, man, that sounds like this thing called post metal or post rock. I was like, I don't even know what the hell that is. So he showed me, I think it was, what was it, Coda Luna?
No, it was...
or was it ISIS?
ISIS.
Yeah.
Oh.
I fell in love right away.
Yeah.
Classic Panopticon, I'm guessing, maybe.
No, it was Oceanic. The album was Oceanic, and
we heard that on vinyl.
I think the first song was Wait, I ever showed you.
Yeah, blew my mind. And from that day, I've pretty much almost exclusively sought out post-metal. I mean, I listen to some other stuff too, but I'm a bit more narrow-minded these days than I was before then.
That makes a lot of sense, though, now that I know. Nick, you're the vocalist, too, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, what's his name? Aaron Turner, I think, from ISIS. Someone always has described him as, like, a guy who just sounds like he's screaming through sandpaper. And he just has that, like, super-duper gritty, like, just absolutely crushing tone to his voice. I guess I can kind of hear where you maybe get a little bit of your sound from.
That's so funny, because you were literally just saying the other day that I sort of sound a little bit
sounds like a cross between Johan from Coda Luna and Aaron Turner from ISIS. But I can understand him a little bit better than those two.
Yeah, your diction is very good, Nick. I mean, sometimes listening to post metal is like, okay, I like these sounds. I don't know if they're words, but that's cool.
Yeah, the vocals tend to get buried in the mix for post metal songs quite a bit. I try to find a nice balance of keeping the, because side note, I also mixed and mastered the album. So when I was doing that, I tried to, keep it, sort of like in that post-metal territory with the vocals, not being overbearing or super on top of the mix or anything.
Right. Yeah, I think in a lot of like the hyphen post genres or post hyphen genres, I meant to say, it's like there's so much emphasis on, you hear the term the wall of sound used a lot. There's like a lot of presence and stuff. And I think, for first debut, I mean, you did a hell of a job really tying everything together. But yeah, so it sounds like you guys have been friends for years. You've all kind of gone back and, worked your way up from your instruments and stuff and came to be this thing. How did this concept come to be? Like, what made you guys decide, all right, it's not enough just to be friends and have similar music tastes. We're going to actually get this thing off the ground and be a band.
Okay, so I actually I started learning guitar from Zach back here a little bit. So I was hanging out with him one time, and I got a late start. I didn't start playing guitar till I was about 22 or 23.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty late, but I was hanging out with him one night, and I had been wanting to learn, but I hadn't really had anyone to like help me out with it. And I was over there watching him play some stuff, and I was like, I want to learn how to play. And he just happened to have an extra guitar, an amp, and a book that he let me just have.
What guitarist doesn't have like 49 extra guitars?
Yeah.
Really?
just hands and
Yeah.
Air.
It was really, it was really like crazy how fast it happened. And then I started practicing, and I was just dabbling at first. I was just gonna like learn it just for fun, but then I kind of got more and more into it. And then after I started learning stuff, like I learned a lot of Metallica when I first started, because that was like one of my favorite bands. And after that, I really got into writing my own music, and that's why I wanted to start writing with them as well.
Yeah.
So, Josh, did you bring like your solo material kind of to the rest of the guys and go, hey, you know what, I think this could work in a band setting? Or, you know?
I bring some riffs here and there, but like a lot of it we do together.
Yeah, and I'm looking at you guys right now. I see a whiteboard on the back. I'm assuming you're all talking to me tonight from your practice space, I'm assuming.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
/ recording studio.
Yeah.
And early on, I think that also when you started to really get into the guitar and you really got the it was shortly after you got the basics down and everything, we started collabing in just kind of off the cuff ways.
Yeah, we would like because like he played keyboards. Like there'd be times where like he would jam around on the drums on the keyboard setting, and I'd play guitar, and we'd just write some stuff. I still have a recording somewhere of some old we did, but
yeah. And then one thing led to another, and this is actually shortly before you were moving to Florida.
Yeah, I moved to Florida.
Yeah, we decided to start a band like 6 months before he decided to move.
Well, hope you can get this EP done. Good luck. No pressure.
Well, that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, that was in 2014 that I moved down to Florida.
5 years.
And they started working on some stuff still, and we chatted, we kept in touch, and we were gonna try and do stuff over, sending through email, send sound files. But that proved to be a little bit more difficult, and I eventually just ended up moving back because I liked Florida. It was a nice adventure, but I wanted to be back where I was at.
Is that not every Pittsburgher's destiny to end up back in Pittsburgh? It's so true. Like
the bubble.
Yeah, for better or for worse. But clearly this project wouldn't have happened if you didn't leave Florida and hopefully not become a Florida man statistic. So
yeah. I don't want to be a Florida man.
No. No. That's interesting though, because I've heard other people say the exact opposite thing on my show, where I'm like I just interviewed the singer from Slice the Cake recently, and like their whole band is international. They have people in Australia, the UK, and I'm talking to them like, well, is it difficult for you to write stuff together? And they're like, no, like email's a thing, like for some people it just seems to come really naturally. And then, I'm in a band now, and like, to me, I'm thinking I couldn't possibly do all this writing and riffing off each other without all of us being in a room. It just doesn't seem like the same thing's going to happen.
I mean, there are lots of bands, lots of different types of bands out there, and, there's, varying degrees of what kind of band they are, but the collaboration is always very important, obviously, no matter what the band is and how that operates. And for us, it was very tight knit. Like we, being friends and everything, we already know how to talk to each other,
Right.
So we don't even have like band fights or anything. I think
we did a while, we did have a lot of disagreements back.
Spill the tea.
It's just writing differences. We were in very much different spaces. Like, we definitely shared a lot of influences with each other, but there's also a lot of differences as well. Like, especially back then, like, I liked post metal, but like I was like really into a lot of thrash and I still am, by the way, and prog metal and melodic death metal. But there was some differences in opinions, eventually we kind of like sort of meshed.
Our scope of what we really appreciated was a bit more narrower. I wouldn't say we were like narrow-minded necessarily, but what our interests were there wasn't a whole lot of room for crossover because of how narrow the scope of our interests were.
Yeah,
and that broadened as we started to work with each other more.
Like I think you can as a musician have interest in so many different genres, but like it's just probably not going to sound that great if you write a polka song on a thrash album with a country song in the middle. I mean, if you want to try it and make it work, good luck. But
I figure out some way to blend those together.
And Zach is actually kind of like sort of like an in between like style. Because like you were pretty much into a lot of stuff I was into, and a lot of stuff that he was into.
Started out that way. We all sort of started.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's a lot different now. It's actually kind of like the dynamic between the three of us.
Yeah.
Started out with you very much on the heavier side of things, and I was very much on the lighter side of things, and then Zach is sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like I'm actually leaning more towards the heavier side of things, and Josh has definitely grown a really good appreciation of the quieter side of things, and now Zach is kind of like he's not really. I mean, you might still be kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I'm kind of. So.
Yeah.
You have a wide variety.
It's kind of like me and Josh almost swapped in a way.
That's interesting. Well, I'm as I'm talking to you guys, I'm kind of getting a sense of like, okay, they're probably close to my age, and like we live in a similar region. I'm thinking, okay, what were they going through in their lives while this album was starting to happen? And like, you know, were there significant life events really that kind of pushed this thing forward? Because it was you know, it was on hiatus for a bit, and then you kind of rebranded, and here you are with this fantastic debut. Like, what kind of pushed it out from behind the curtain?
I guess I'll start with that. I have I mean, it's pretty stereotypical, but I had some relationship issues, and that definitely led to me sort of walking away from, you know, like playing the field, if you will, or whatever, and I decided to focus on my own interests, like, you know, music or writing in general, and just creative interests. I found a lot of solace in, so that provided me some peace or relief or whatever from some more tumultuous times in my life.
That's fair.
For me, I think this past year was so uncertain with everything that I wanted to be a part of like just some type of creative thing, you know, something to maybe say like, well, this year sucked, but this came out, or something really cool came out.
Right.
I was part of. But I actually joined them probably, you were, 2 songs into writing?
Yeah, we had written Morrisoff and Penumbra.
Yeah. So I came in like a little bit after they started writing the album.
And I mean, how did that process all go? You got like a bit of your album written, and then you just need to pull somebody in to like complete the sound, I'm guessing, you know? Well, I mean, you need a bassist, obviously, but...
Yeah. Well, bass with me and Nick was probably like, it was a pretty collaborative thing with this because I didn't really know how they worked. I mean, they'd been doing Cracked Chalice and stuff like way before I joined. I was friends with them, but I wasn't part of it. So there was a learning curve to it. But I would say, you know, past a few sessions, I kind of got a handle on kind of how the whole dynamic goes. And one of them starts off with a riff, and it kind of goes from there.
Okay, yeah, that's always a question I ask people is what is your writing process like? But I realize I kind of jumped over if Josh and Zach wanted to mention anything about, you know, stuff that was going on in your life, like what your kind of personal contributions were to maybe the story or like the feel of the whole album.
Well, for me, I guess it was just started about a year ago, and it's just a lot of stress and frustration with everything going on. So just take it out in a healthy way on the guitar is my way of looking.
Fair enough. A lot of people are feeling that still. I mean, we're coming out of all this bullshit, but it's not over yet. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and then are we talking about like just for like this project in general, or?
Well, anything you want to say, because I think music serves a role. It doesn't serve the same role in every person's life. Like it may be cathartic for some people. It may be like intellectual for other people. I mean, however you want to answer that question.
For me, this project was just about trying to like hone their sound like back from like the last project and like try and rein some stuff in and try some new stuff out. I mean, a lot of my influences still kind of remain the same from the last project, but I feel like it's a lot more focused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we were pretty all over the place with the first project.
What did that first project sound like? Could you describe it?
You had Star Trek audio clips in it.
I did.
Very different.
Yeah, really well, actually.
We did the classic grab a clip from some sort of thing that moves you in some emotional way and throw it into your post-rock song thing.
Yeah, the Alan Watts method, I believe you could call that. Yeah.
But yeah, we did stuff like that, and there was quite a bit more clean guitar with delay pedal and
lots of delay. Lots and lots of delay and reverb.
It was. I would say, grab pretty much any post-rock band, and we might have been pretty strongly influenced.
We had some experimental scream vocals in it. That's when you were kind of experimenting.
That was interesting. I actually learned how to do vocals, scream vocals for this album. I forced myself to figure it out, and I just one day it just sort of clicked, and I started putting some tracks into our songs, and then just from there I started to fill things out with vocals.
Did you feel like you unlocked a talent you had hidden within you? Because I know that's how I felt when I learned how to scream. Because it's some days you just get it. It just happens.
It was very strange. It was. I mean, it was still a learning experience. I started to do it, and I was like, wow, this sounds a lot different than the throat clenched, like somebody's choking me to death sort of sound that I was making for the first project. And I started to get a bit more focused on what it was that, because I think obviously everybody's voice is different, and my voice is a bit deeper than average, so my screams I think are probably a little bit deeper than average. But I tried to not be like growling and everything. I wanted to get something that was a nice barked scream that I could sustain,
mm-hmm.
but it wasn't some sort of rumble. And that took a little bit of doing, but I don't know. Yeah, I definitely feel like I
like it. I like it a lot.
I've always loved playing, or coming up with synth sounds and doing stuff like that. But now I feel like I actually play an instrument, I guess, in some sort of way. It was very gratifying.
That's usually the opposite of what I hear from vocalists, because a lot of vocalists feel as if they're like, well, everybody else plays an instrument and I just make sounds with my mouth. And I'm like,
oh no,
yeah.
I love doing vocals. It's something that I never thought I would ever be doing, and I certainly think that I have a lot of room for improvement. And you could say that about anything, but at the end of the day, it's something that I'm very, very thankful that I can contribute to the band with.
Right. Yeah, you can't. I don't think it's very easy to convincingly pull off a post-metal sludge kind of sound without some kind of gritty sort of vocal. So I'm happy you learned. I'm looking at my list here, and I know, Nick, you had made a note about the album concepts and kind of your method of writing and stuff. I am really curious about what Threnody is about, and I'm lifting this from your Bandcamp page, but the description said that Threnody is the journey of one leaving the many, a departure from conformity to become an individual. Each track is a step in that journey. So how did this all come to be?
Well, when the first song we started working on was Morrisov, which is the second track, and we had no idea what the track listing was going to be at that point, obviously. So I basically had this vague concept of sort of it was a very accusational and confrontational sort of concept where I was basically addressing this idea that people don't really connect with truth anymore, and it's more so about going through motions and so there's so many current day applications of this, but I always wanted to do something that was a problem that has been around for a long time. I am big on being current, but I want to be able to look at what's going on currently and be like, what's the root cause of things, instead of just being like, this politician's bad, or
Right.
this major event's happening because this, it's something where I want to be able to give somebody a more longer lasting sort of advice, if you will. So, I started to do some lyrics, and I wasn't happy with them. I wasn't happy with the concepts until around the second or third song, I think. Or no, it was Penumbra, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the second song.
The second song that we wrote, which was Penumbra. We wrote the track listing way out of order. I mean, maybe some people were chronologically, but we certainly didn't.
No.
So, once we got around to that one, I started writing lyrics. I realized I wanted this to be a bit more of like an emotional album. And that was where the idea of focusing on somebody who is basically discovering themselves. And I started to draw from my own well of experience and sort of like how I view things. Not in a, my lyrics probably sound a bit more esoteric or maybe philosophical or whatever. But I try to, as much as possible, focus a bit more on the emotion of things and make things a bit more personal, even if they are abstract. And the journey of the one leading the many, like I said, or like it says in the description, is kind of like this idea of realizing that you have your own life, and there's a lot of people don't really think a lot of times about why they're doing the things
Right.
they do every day. And the beginning of the album is very, very heavy, and AP in Mind, for instance, is just, it's balls to the wall, heavy, really, really, it very much focuses on the idea of like conformity and how, because the AP in Mind is about, it describes what bees, I think.
Essentially,
Yeah. The AP in Mind is a bee's mind, I guess. So, like the hive mind sort of thing or whatever. And, by that point, that's about the middle of the album, and then it turns a bit more towards focusing on what your future can be if you actually appreciate your own interests, your own life, what you truly believe in, what do you want to focus on. A bit more of a life lesson as opposed to an accusation to society is what it ended up being at the end of the day.
That's fair. I did not Google this beforehand, but I believe Threnody, isn't it kind of like a song or like a poem?
It's
or
a
something?
lament, basically.
Okay.
And the lament, the Threnody is it's almost like a lament for the rest of the people who don't ever discover this. It's like this whole album, if you will, the lyrics anyway. And the guys, they let me pretty much run free with the lyrics. They were like, yeah, whatever, I mean, you guys had your input.
Have fun, Nick. There
a
you go.
little bit, but not much. I mean, he runs it past us, and like if we have contributions, we throw it out there.
Yeah, that's dumb, man. You should change that. But yeah, so I mean, the Threnody being a lament or whatever, it's with the album context as a whole, it's a bit more of a sadder, I guess, thing to contemplate because, again, the accusational stuff just did not feel right, and it just at the end of the day, it felt more like I was lamenting the rest of society as opposed to accusing society. I'm certainly not trying to come across as like I have a wick in my third eye or anything like that, but
Right.
I do look at some other people living, their lives, and I feel bad for them because they go through motions and they go through, being deceived, by lots of different things. And I wish that more people would embrace free thinking and nonconformity, and at the very least, the search for self-discovery.
You're walking on a path I can relate to right now. Like, I feel like the 30s are just the time in your life where you're like, oh, the authentic self. Yes, I need to search for that. And you do see so many creatives in general, like artists, musicians, poets, whatever, addressing that topic, but in very different ways. And I think because it's kind of, for a lot of people, very universal, I think that opens it up to allow you to express your thoughts on it in a humongous variety of ways. It's not like a monolithic you know, everybody's journey towards self-acceptance is like this. That is like completely the opposite.
It's different for everybody.
That's another nice thing about the lyrics too, is while he has his own thing in mind with them, anyone can take them and kind of relate to them.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a paradox I discovered after writing the lyrics, was that, you know, I'm basically saying, figure it out for yourself. But if I say that with the lyrics, then should I really be telling people what the lyrics mean?
Oh, that's that's a little mind trick. Have you had anybody, like people you've sent the album to, like have a listen and be like, oh, well, I like this because this message or that message, or like what kind of feedback have you guys gotten on it so far?
We got a guy who follows us on Facebook, and he was somebody who bought the album pretty early on, and he told us in a message that he really liked the last track on the album. As far as the lyrics are concerned, I think that he basically just really liked how I was going for that sort of like awakening vibe, you know, that idea of like figuring things out, you know, and discovering purpose. It was something that he liked. Is what I got from his messages. But other than that, not really.
Didn't he say something about like sacred geometry or something?
Oh boy,
it wasn't really anything.
Oh, there was a couple things he mentioned, but that, you know, but again, that's his interpretation, and I wanted people to be able to figure it out for themselves, because, you know, just like they're figuring out life for themselves, if they hear the album, then again, figure it out for yourself. You know, like, what does this mean to you? If you like it and you've developed a connection to it, then that connection should be yours and yours alone.
Right. That brings me to something that I did have on my list I want to talk about, and in some way you guys are kind of unique in this regard. Maybe not in a good way, only because of the timing, but you had to put out this album, and then you're in the unfortunate situation to not have a place to play it out right now, or to like really kind of kick it off to a live audience. So how did that unfortunate reality right now, how did that kind of inform the studio process and finishing everything up, like knowing that you're gonna put it on a silver platter and be like, here you go, it's digital only right now?
We kind of always knew that our first project was going to be something that, you know, may or may not have been received in a good or bad way, but our expectations were not exactly high for some sort of like, you know, major exposure or anything. It's certainly not, at least locally, because we knew about the shows and whatnot. So as far as shows, we definitely want to play them at some point and whenever we can. But, you know, it's one of those things, you make something, you put it out there, and at the very least, we were able to achieve something. And we really enjoyed the process. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's, if we don't love it, then why are we doing it?
Yeah, and we kind of went into this project already with the kind of mindset of being more of a studio band. Like when we had done our other stuff in the past, we had kind of like jammed stuff out, like, and played through it and practiced as though we were doing it live. And as we started, we decided like it's much easier for us to write and create in like a recording sort of studio sort of way, as opposed to like just jamming it out live. So like, yeah, we definitely want to like eventually play a show live when we still need to get some equipment for that. And most of us, you played live before, right? And I've done a little bit of live stuff, but we knew we were going to be like a studio band out the gate, and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hopefully play shows locally and everything.
Yeah.
But, you know, touring was never really in the cards for us, because we have regular jobs, and, you know, especially with the type of jobs that we have, it's kind of hard to schedule those sort of things.
Yeah.
We definitely want to, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, my dumbass is already hopping ahead, because I'm like, oh, I'm in a band that's starting out too. I should get on a show with you guys, because I'm in like an alternative rock kind of grunge band now. And it's like, okay, I could fit on a bill with SHOALS. Yeah, I could do that.
That'd be great.
But it's difficult though. Like putting all this work into something you feel really strongly about, and then even if some people want to say that it's like, oh, you're just fishing for compliments or stuff, you work so hard on something, you want to show it to someone, you want to like get your energy out there and play it live, or just like see how it gels. And I just feel so sad for everybody who can't do that right now.
Yeah, it definitely does suck. We did put a lot of hours into this project, and it's just lots of thought, at the minimal side of things, and then there was a lot of like struggle to figure things out as far as the technical side of things. And at the end of the day, we really just loved the process of working together, and coming up with this thing. It's a fun thing for us to do. It's we're having fun, and that's important to us. And so, it sucks to not play shows, but maybe someday.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no reason to immediately hop to like, oh, we have to be touring or whatever. I think a lot of beginning bands set themselves up for failure with that, because they just kind of maybe lose the whole reason in the process when they kind of jump the shark and go, okay, yeah, we got to be headlining for blah, blah, blah. It's like, I mean, based on what you said, Josh, and like Nick, you were talking about producing the album. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with going, hey, we're figuring this out as we go. We're still acquiring gear. We're still learning how to mix or produce. And like, that doesn't lessen the impact of your music, I don't think. It may not be up to what certain people would consider, oh, this is the best quality. But it's like, okay, I don't like the idea that people think that everyone has to be sitting on this stuff for years, and then when it's polished and perfect is when we release it.
Well, yeah, and we also wanted to have a bit more of a raw sort of indie sound anyway. Having something, there is such a thing as overproducing.
Yeah.
And there was a point where the guys were telling me that they were like, look, you got to stop at something. You can't just keep on perfecting it and everything. And it's certainly nowhere close to perfect. But that was kind of the point, is finding that nice sort of territory to realize this is going to sound this way, and if you mess with it anymore, then you're kind of like missing the point, And yeah, so a little bit of a rawer sound was what we were looking for, and we got it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it sounds really good. I'm happy with it.
What were some of the biggest lessons you learned from finally putting a debut album together? Like, you only get one debut album, so surely there's certain takeaways.
Don't cram.
Time management.
Okay.
Yes. I definitely I rushed things so much and set arbitrary deadlines for myself, and that was more of a personal thing. These guys, they obviously have their own issues, but
I think setting deadlines is good, though, because if you don't, kind of like you said earlier, you'll just keep going and going and going, and then you won't get it out there, or you'll just take too long.
Yeah.
Also, another big one was to hype it up before release of the album. Not wait till it's out and available for purchase, because then you're just sitting there day after day and just you're like, okay, we're getting some traffic here, But
doesn't that suck though? Like, that's one thing I hate, is when I stumble across a band that I'm like, whoa, these guys are great, and then I go to their page and they have like 13 likes, and I'm like, okay, like, how did I get here? Yeah. And it takes so much dedication to want to show your little gem to the world before you really feel like it's ready. But that's how, at least to me anyway, that's how you garner the interest these days. And you'll surely have one person who like hooks onto it and goes, oh, I like this. This is cool, even though this is a demo. Like, has that been a struggle, I guess, in like this social media world? I mean, it feels like you have to just compete against everybody else. And
Well, there's so much that you have to pay attention to. Like, there's various social media platforms. There's trying to get on trying to get interviews like what we're doing now. Trying to find the ways to put yourself out there, and other than that,
yeah.
I do think it's great though that you found me through Discord, Nick, because that's like a very untapped resource still, I think, for a lot of musicians, because it kind of puts you at a more like face-to-face level where you can talk more intimately about your art, but unfortunately it doesn't have maybe the wide net that like Facebook or Instagram does. And then, as I said before, you're at the disadvantage of you don't get to have that FaceTime with, hey, we're playing shows, and you can like walk up to your merch table and buy a CD or whatever, which kind of puts some people at a deficit. But I mean, I don't know. It's just really difficult, and I'm like waiting for the interview where I don't have to say, God, I can't wait till this is all over, you know. Unfortunately. Well, as you guys have like been working on this thing and you've now rolled it out, what are your big takeaways from the whole thing? Like whether that's to you personally or you as musicians, like how have you improved as musicians throughout the process? And then two, what is your next step going to be? Are you going to continue writing music in this kind of style or switch it up?
Well, I mean, like as far as takeaway from this album, it's that the whole process is like hard and complicated and frustrating sometimes. I don't know. I mean, like as far as the putting everything together, I mean that was kind of Nick's thing. My whole thing with bass was just trying to, I guess, figure out how to gel or match up with these guys. I mean, I'm really happy with the album, I guess, at the end of the day.
You were talking about what are we looking to do in the future? Is that?
Yeah.
Oh,
But also if you had any really like resonating aha moments from finally getting this thing out there.
I think that we all came to a consensus as to what our best song was and where we need to move forward. That was
Enduring Firmament.
Yeah, the last song on the album we really like. There was Umbra, I think, that we all agreed.
Yeah, the last two like full tracks of the album, because there's a filler track between them, but those two songs, I think we all just generally understood as being kind of encapsulates everything that we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And when we move forward, you know, we're looking at maybe being a little bit darker, maybe being a little bit heavier, but you know, keeping that brooding and sort of beautiful sort of vibe in there as well.
And you're talking about the last track, what, in Enduring Firmament? It's like 11 something minutes long.
Yeah. We were writing it, and we're like, we when we were writing it, we knew that it was going to be the last song of the album, because at that point we only had like 2 songs left to write, because we decided we wanted to do like 7.
I think it was that song and actually the first song of the album.
We waited to write our first and last song last. So.
Oh, I was going to ask you that. Like, was any? It's maybe a stupid question to ask, but was any of this like through composed? Because like thinking about it, yes, there are some songs where it does seem to kind of have like a chorus and a verse and stuff, but then there's other parts where it's just totally this formless, big, swelling, giant thing. And, you know, that's hard for me to grasp, how bands can just like sit in a room and go, we're just gonna start, and when it's done, it's done.
I mean, certainly some songs definitely had that right as we go sort of approach. I think Enduring Firmament was actually like that.
Yeah.
And then other songs like Avian Mind, when we were writing that one was at first one of the more difficult songs to write. And I think it might have been because we were overthinking it a little bit.
And talking about
Avian Mind.
I think that one came pretty quickly, didn't it?
Was it?
That was just that riff that Zach started off.
No, I'm referring more to the debate of the writing process and what else we wanted to do with it beyond what we had initially made. Because there was a lot of discussion about like where we could take it and everything.
We wanted it to be a lot longer.
We did. We wanted it to be a longer song.
Together?
I thought it was pretty straightforward.
It's straightforward initially, but what I'm saying is like afterwards, like we talked a lot about what we wanted to do with it, because we thought it needed to be this big thing and everything. But then
we wanted to kind of like expand upon it, I guess, or just keep it what it was.
Yeah, I remember I wanted to expand to like a slower, more too.
And then we sort of like started to settle a bit more and realize that it's fine the way it is. You know, we don't need to.
Yeah.
That was also a big part of our journey of writing with this project, was not overthinking things, because the first project that we abandoned what was wrought with overthinking.
Yeah, it's as like a person who's figuring stuff out and how to collaborate with other musicians, I think a lot of times that is a problem you run into, where you kind of feel like you're solving a puzzle instead of just allowing things to happen and then kind of correcting course from there, maybe. And it sort of shows maturity on your part. Like, even just because I can see you on video, just seeing how the four of you talk to each other, I can tell that you're really good friends, because you're not like, you might be, you know, clarifying something one of you guys says, or you give each other a look and like it never feels like it's coming from a confrontational thing. Like, you clearly kind of got this album out in a way that made all four of you happy and fulfilled your vision, I guess. And like, I find that for a lot of musicians, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, initially the mindset was compromise when it was just me, Josh, and Zach. And then compromise turned into collaboration, and then I think that turned into like this more of like a, how do we figure out a way to actually unify all the influence?
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll just speak for my own self. Like, for me, like, a lot of it also came down to, I had to like learn to like, you know, when you do your own stuff for a while and then you kind of get into a band setting, you gotta kind of learn like that there is a give and take with it, and you know, you kind of like learn like, you know, where you can influence stuff to go, or you know, what isn't gonna work.
Yeah. Well, it's a relationship, like friendship or a romantic relationship. I mean, I'm starting to learn that now myself, and it is difficult. You're gonna have upsets. You're gonna have points where you feel like the message doesn't fit or whatever, and that's hard.
The biggest thing to keep in mind is just not to like, at the end of the day, don't get overworked about it, and just, you know that you're all gonna come together. You're gonna figure it out one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right.
We all wanted to be good, so it'd be good if we just let it.
How much of your guys' week do you spend with each other? I mean, how many times do you get together and write and jam and stuff?
As a band, one day.
Yeah.
One day a week. Sometimes, every now and then it's two, but usually one day. Usually like on Mondays, typically.
Okay, cool. Yeah, again, I'm like interrupting your brain practice, but no, not really. But
we're on break right now.
Yeah, there you go.
Reserved hiatus.
The next album's coming around the corner, I'm sure. I'm looking through my list of other things I like to ask people typically before I start to wind down for the interview. But like, in general, I always like to ask people what defines success to them. And like, I think especially as a newer band, that might be interesting to hear your takes on that, because you get some seasoned people and their idea of success is like maybe measured in numbers or other metrics. But what do you guys consider success?
I guess I'll go first. For me, it really just boils down to actually completing something. I've had a lot of different creative interests and pursuits all my life. It started from an early age, which was very heavily influenced by my grandfather. And, you know, whether it was, you know, like I wanted to be a director, I wanted to write screenplays or write a book or whatever it is. Now, I've had all these interests. You know, a lot of people have interests, but you know, I never really followed through and completed any of them. And I finally completed something. And for me, that is success.
That's literally been my journey. So right on, Nick. I'm a serial dabbler. So, Josh, looks like you're kind of...
Yeah, no, for me, it's very much in the same vein. It's getting, being able to get a project out, like, it's really cool, like being able to see your album like on Spotify or YouTube, and just having that sense of accomplishment with having written it. Especially like with me, for instance, like, you know, starting so late, like, and being able to actually pick up the guitar and get myself in like a creative mindset and be able to create. Like, the fact that I can just like, you know, get some of my creativity out there for people to listen to, and even if just one person hears it and likes it, like for me, that's an accomplishment. I will be happy with that. Obviously, I'll be, you know, going for more. You always shoot to improve, but like, that's having anyone enjoy it, something that you created, is amazing.
Good answer. Zach, Dan, you guys have a thought on that?
It's pretty much the same thing as them. I mean, like, if this thing blew up everywhere, great. I wasn't expecting that. So if 100 people listen to it and 10 people were like, hey, I actually really like that, I'm into that kind of music, then for me that's everything. Just being able to put it out there and have some people that dig it.
Zach's very quiet there in the back.
It's a lot of the same for me. Like, I've written a lot of stuff over like the last 15 years, but like to be a part of something that's actually out there and have anyone like it.
Yeah, I'm learning now it's extremely vulnerable to put anything that comes from like a deep place of practice and work and heart. To show that to the world is very challenging. So that's
we got a dislike on our YouTube video. I was like, how dare you?
At the same time, it's like we actually have a like to dislike ratio on our YouTube. It's like,
but it's like, who did that though? Who is that one specific?
Right, person? I will find you.
And you took time out of your day to click that.
I've always wanted to be a YouTube hater.
Finally, that is the definition of success. You have at least one YouTube dislike. Oh my god, that's such a good point though. Like, who are these people that actually do sit around and especially with you guys, because you're new, you don't have like a humongous reach right now. How the hell did they find you and then go dislike you?
Right,
that is so stupid.
I don't think I've disliked a single YouTube page.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I have.
It's too much energy.
Yeah. Well, Dan, you also, did I hear one of you guys say earlier you have played live before? Are you in another project as well?
No,
around the area?
I actually kind of got out of music for probably, I don't know, like 8 years or so. Coming back into this band is really my first like active music thing in a really long time.
Can I ask you what made you leave it, kind of?
I don't know. I just kind of grew away from it. I was in a band like right out of high school for probably 3 years or so. And then I went to college and stuff and just didn't really, just didn't have time for it. I still play guitar and whatnot, but and then after college, I got involved with like a cover band of just older music, just to get active again.
Right.
And that was like maybe 2 years or so, and then I just got a new job and just kind of started to grow away from it. I just listened to stuff mostly at that point.
And I struggled for years to get him into the band.
He kept sending me like demo stuff of Insurat and stuff, and I was listening to it. He'd always be like, "Oh, by the way, just so you know, we're looking for a bassist." And then they sent me, I think it was Morrisop. And when I heard Morrisop, I'm like, okay, I love this music, like this style of music, but what he's doing in general, if I don't get involved with this, like I'm an idiot,
Yeah, and you're gonna regret it later, probably.
Yeah, it's just hard to find people in this area that are into that kind of music. It's not like there's not like a huge scene around it or anything.
You do bring up a good point with that. I know you're in the general Pittsburgh area. I'm not trying to dox you guys, but in our general region, yes, that is true. I find that the Pittsburgh music scene in general is really into like dad rock and stoner stuff. And I mean, we have a decent metal scene, but yeah, I'm already thinking ahead, like, where is Shoals going to fit on a bill? Like, if we have any freaking venues left at this point when we come out of this. But
right, yeah.
That is kind of an uphill battle. It's the stuff you guys write is not necessarily what the people here are, like, going to run out on a Tuesday night and listen to. It's the stuff I listen to in private, but,
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I don't think you go to any major city in the United States and find probably more than 1,000 people that listen to post-rock or post-metal. I mean, okay, maybe it's a little bit of an understatement, but I mean, it's such a niche genre, but also it is metal, and it's one of those things where you keep on making it, you keep on trying to put something out there that hopefully the broader consensus of metal will appreciate more.
Right. Yeah, I find post-metal is a lot of times coming from overseas. I mean, like we were talking about Cult of Luna earlier. I know Zach walked out of the room, and I can retouch on this when he comes back. But because we're all in a similar city, were any of you guys at the Cult of Luna in Catatonia show like 6 or 7 years ago? That is so weird. So we were all in the same room, but we just didn't know each other.
No kidding.
Oh, you were there, really?
Yeah,
Cool.
and I've said this on my interviews before. I kick myself all the time because I didn't listen to this type of stuff back then. I thought Cult of Luna was so boring. I walked out, and I didn't leave the show. I didn't leave the show, but I walked into the smoking section at Mr. Smalls and was just like, "Oh my god, this is so boring. I can't believe anybody likes this." And now, now, like 10 years later, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can listen to Mariner every now and then. Like, that's pretty cool."
Yeah.
Like, fuck me, man. Like, that's
so funny though, because when we went, it was headlined by both Cold Luna. It was a double.
I wasn't there for that one.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Caspian, I think, was at that. I think Caspian was on that bill too. Maybe I can't remember.
It was Intronaut.
Intronaut as well. Yeah.
Tesseract.
Oh, you know what? You're right. I think I'm combining shows. Yeah. I mean, I've gone to see all those bands like multiple times, and when I saw Tesseract was on your list of influences, I went, "Ooh, okay, nice."
Yeah, that's a big one for Zach. Yeah, that show, that's so funny though that you mentioned Cold Luna being boring, because when we went there for Cold Luna, and Cold Luna came on before Catatonia.
Yeah.
And when Catatonia came on, it just sounded so much weaker to us.
We walked out for Catatonia.
Well, and like they're totally different bands, and like I can say now, Catatonia is essentially my favorite band in existence. Like, I've grown to love them so much.
Oh, wow.
That's so funny. We were total flip-flops on that. Just That's wild. That is so wild. I mean,
all types of people.
Yeah, really. Well, I am thankful though, and I don't know your guys' opinion on this, especially because it sounds like some of you have moved away and come back to Pittsburgh, but I do find that we're actually pretty lucky. I think we get a pretty decent variety of gigs here. Maybe not like great representation for smaller bands like you guys just starting out, or people playing kind of weird stuff, but I think when it comes to larger acts, we actually are pretty lucky that a lot of bands will come through, especially like prog. I mean, I wouldn't be into prog metal had it not been for being able to see a lot of bands come through where I live, I think. Well, I'm starting to derail this, and I don't want to do that, but this is what happens when you get me started to talk about prog. But I am going through my last couple notes here. Before I ask you my last one or two questions, is there anything you guys want to say about Shoals that I haven't covered, or any topics you want to bring up?
Our first release kind of just went out there and probably flew under a lot of people's radar, but expect to hear from us soonish. We're definitely plowing ahead. Yeah, we're taking a little break, and we're going to figure some things out, but there's certainly no end in sight for us. So, if you want to check us out and you like what you hear, then you should definitely expect to hear more of us in the future.
Good. Anybody else on that? It sounds like you kind of covered it.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm just going to be rude and cut to the last question, which is always my favorite and probably not my guest's favorite. But for each of you guys, if you could only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
Oh, wow. I'll let you go first.
Total dismay on everyone's face.
Probably Oracle by In Flames, Master of Puppets, Metallica, and the second Death Clock album.
Oh, wow. Okay. Nice choice on that. Yeah.
All right, I get mine. Eternal Kingdom by Cold Luna, Obzen by Meshuggah, and Koine Yoken by Deftones.
Oh, yeah. I forgot you guys mentioned Deftones were a big influence. That is my favorite Deftones album, so good taste.
For me, it is Black Sabbath's first album. Probably Super Unknown by Soundgarden. And I'm going to say Oceanic by ISIS.
Good choice.
Nice.
For
Last
me,
but not least.
Somewhere on the Highway by Cold Winter for sure. And then the double album by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
More bang for your buck when you do a double album,
Exactly,
for sure.
yeah.
Yes.
And then for my final one, it would have to be a Deftones album, but since Zach stole my favorite one, I would say that probably Saturday Night Wrist by Deftones.
Awesome. Man, see, okay, I'm never getting rid of that question. I love hearing how people answer it. I guess I didn't say there wasn't a rule where you couldn't have the same album, but I like to see when bandmates are like, no, you first. It's fine. It's all right. But yeah, well, that's usually my last question. So I just want to thank you guys for giving me a little bit of your time on a Monday night. And
thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us. This is awesome.
I know we only had one album to talk about, and you know, it's your new band and stuff, but I mean, you guys, I really do think that you released something awesome, and I hope that I can honestly, if I can personally kind of draw you into the connections I know in our local music scene, it would be awesome to see you guys live at some point when we're all able to do that. So
that'd be awesome. I love that.
Either way, if you want to learn more about Shoals, I know they're very new to social media and everything, but you can check them out on Bandcamp as Shoals the Band. Shoals, SHOALS. Shoals the Band on Bandcamp, and then on Facebook they are under Shoals Band Official. I also want to drop a small little plug, even though this is a podcast where I do talk about myself among other guests quite a bit, but I do want to plug my own band, because yes, if you have been a listener for 53 episodes, you may be amazed to hear that, because I'm really great at talking myself down and saying I couldn't ever possibly figure out how to write music. Well, boys and girls, somehow I did it. So if you want to go drop a like on Facebook, the name of the band I am now in is called For Those in Question. Big surprise reveal. So we really only have a Bandcamp and Facebook page set up right now. We are working on music. We're looking for a vocalist. P.S. If you're in the Pittsburgh area and you sound something like Ben from Breaking Benjamin, hit me up. I'll get in touch. So, again, shameless plug here. Please drop a like for Those in Question on Facebook. And I bring this up mostly because I talked at the end of this interview with them about, hey, maybe we'll share a stage someday. Well, I'd like to see that happen. So, thanks as always for listening. Hope you enjoyed this interview.